the numbers, the statistics, all of that logical stuff there, all right? And the really interesting thing is I've been asked to talk about connecting from the top, and I guess that's the CEO point of view. And the really interesting thing about this, as we go higher in organisations, we tend to drift more and more into this logical space, yeah? And in fact, if we go back 30 or 40 years at an executive level or a CEO level or a board level, this side was really never talked about at all. The emotional side was never really talked about. There were one or two really intuitive, powerful leaders in the world who got it, but it wasn't a topic of conversation. It is a topic of conversation now at a board level and an executive level, and a really important topic of conversation. But there's still a couple of big challenges that senior leaders have in relation to this, what we might call the intangible dimensions of the organisation: culture, people, leadership, the emotional stuff. And the first of those is we continue to underestimate how important it is. And right down the most dry, boring end of economics is a discipline called econometrics. Did you do any econometrics, Stephen? A little, yeah. I did a lot. In my final year, I studied under a world-renowned econometrician, a guy called Erkin Byram. Actually, the way he looked was really important here. Can those of you with, I'm looking at Bill, the older people in the room, remember the Jackson 5 in their young days? Yes. Yeah, yep. So this was Erkin to a T. You see, Erkin was a Turkish Cypriot. He had his darkish complexion, and he was a tiny man. He was about 5 foot, maybe a touch over, and he had this great, endearing afro hairdo. All right? And I noticed through the course of the year that the hair was just getting longer and longer and longer. He seemed completely oblivious to the fact. I went on my final term holiday and I came back to university. I went up to his office, as I regularly did, and I opened the door and I peered through a cigar-smoked room. This was the mid-late 1980s. You were allowed to do that in workplace at that stage. But I could see Erkin. So the hair had all gone. And I said to Erkin, "What's the story with the new hairdo?" And Erkin started to explain really only as an economist could. The cost of shampooing his hair on a net present value or discounted cash flow basis was now more expensive than a $10 haircut. So it was time to cut his hair, right? Now, there is no doubting that is a perfectly logical way to make a decision about when to cut your hair. It's a perfectly rational way to arrive at that conclusion. Yet I guarantee no one in this room makes that decision on the basis of that criteria. Right? I know some people in the room put a lot more effort into this decision, a lot more thinking around it than others, but I guarantee no one uses that criteria. So what does cause us to make that decision? Things like, well, how does it make me feel? How do I look? How do I come across to others? And for one or two of us is the wife or partner nagging us about getting tidied up. What are these things? They are all about emotion. And what we forget about in organisations is, particularly as we go higher up and we get focused more on data and information and reports, we think it's all about the logic, but actually it's not. Remember what I said at the outset. What is an organisation? It is a group of people who come together to create something of value for others. It's about people and their connection with that value. And what drives those people is not what they think, it's what they feel. Donald Kahn, who's a world-renowned neurologist, he put it this way. He said the essential difference between emotion and logic is that emotion leads us to action, while logic leads us to conclusions. So the challenge for the CEO and the challenge for leaders who want to think and operate like a CEO is how you bridge that gap. How do you connect people at an emotional level in your organisation, even though you've got this logical construct in between? Yet, when we think about, as leaders or as managers in particular in organisations, where is our time and attention going within the organisation? See, most people conclude it's more down the logical end, and the higher up we get, the more we're focused in the logic. And what that essentially means is we get a situation like this. that people's behaviours, what influences their actions, is emotional, is down here, and yet where our time and focus is going is more down the logical end. And you can see there's a natural disconnect between where we are operating and yet what actually matters to people, to our employees, to our customers, to other stakeholders. So, looking from the dark side, that logical, analytical side, whether we're talking about any form of change, innovation, transformation, continuous improvement, one thing is constant, and that's culture, people, and behaviours make the difference. And in fact, if we take a look at innovation in particular, we get this interesting dimension here, which is it doesn't matter how much we plough into investing in innovation, none of it pays off until we get the culture right. So you've got to get the culture right. Because I think one of the real challenges we have is too much of us to think about our organisational culture and we're simply evaluating it, is it good or is it bad? Yeah, it's a really good culture at our place. If we're moving higher up and we're looking at it from a strategic point of view, a CEO point of view, we need to think about it in a more disciplined, focused way. What are the attributes of an organisational culture that will actually maximise the opportunity for innovation and successful change in the organisation, which are now a constant? Well, as we distilled all of the research that we could find and layered in our own experiences, we came up with this little model here. These are what we think are the 7 key attributes of an innovation culture. And the first key attribute is that the organisation and everyone within the organisation has to have a really deep focus on the customer experience. What is an organisation? A group of people who come together to create something of value for others. We need to understand what those people value. And we all need to be looking and seeking those insights out. And it's not good enough just to do a customer survey and get some satisfaction ratings and a few comments. We actually need to get into the lives of our customers and understand what they value, what drives them, and what motivates them. Then you find the answers, which are really, really important. Now, from an innovation point of view, that one seems fairly obvious. The other one I really just briefly want to talk about is this one here, passion from purpose. Because a lot of people, when you say that, they don't necessarily think that would be important for an innovation culture. Why would that be? Why would that be? Why would it be important to have deep passion for the purpose of what you are doing? Because, very simply, change is hard work. It is so much easier to come to work on a given day and do the same as I did yesterday. It doesn't require as much energy as if I come with a mind of how am I going to improve? What are we going to change? What are we going to do differently? And the energy required for that hard work, there needs to be an intrinsic motivation within our people. And that's what comes from purpose. Does that make sense? Purpose in this context might mean a number of things. It might mean genuinely making a difference in people's lives. That's what motivates us and gets out of bed in the morning and drives us on and drives us on. It might be that we're aiming to set much better standards than have ever existed in our industry or our organisation before. Or it might be the drive and the intrinsic motivation that comes from wanting to continue a great legacy of our team or our organisation. Whatever the source of that intrinsic motivation is, doesn't matter, but you must have it if you're going to become an effectively innovative organisation which really deals with change exceptionally well. The other one's collaboration. Obviously, very, very clear. If you're going to be a great innovative change organisation, people working together is absolutely paramount. Change agility, all right? The ability to deal with organisationally change. And finally, curiosity. You know, that curiousness of wanting to know what's going on in the outside world. You know, Gary Hamill, who visited here a few months ago, and he said that 80% of what organisations need to know to be successful in the future lie outside of your industry. We need to be curious. As I like to say, I love this quote, it's not my quote, but the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Go to the extremes, don't go to best practice. Forget about best practice. If you want to be innovative, if you want to be a great change organisation, look on the fringes. That's where the answers and that's where the insights lie. The way we work around here, all right? This is something that TakeON is really trying to shift. The idea that we haven't got time to improve. We haven't got time to build the capability of our people. We haven't got time to sit back and think about how we're going to improve what we're doing at an individual level, at a team level, at an organisational level. But when you look at the really high-performing organisations in the world, sporting organisations, all sorts of organisations, this is what they do. They build innovation and change and development into the cadence of the organisation, into the rhythm and routine. Yet in most corporate organisations, what I see is that we try and bolt this stuff onto the side of that rhythm and routine. We have business as usual, and then occasionally we step outside to think about improvement, to think about innovation, to think about developing the skills and capabilities of our people. As change gets faster and faster and the pace that we need to move at in the world, that model is redundant. You have to build this into the rhythm and routine of the organisation. So it's something that we are doing on an ongoing, regular basis. To be effective in our organisations, we all need to start thinking a little bit more like a CEO. The old model is redundant. There's a new pathway, right? And you guys are at the forefront of it. Thank you.